Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear is not a random battlefield mishap. It's not a one-time fluke. And if you understand the system behind it, you'll start noticing it everywhere, across wars, economies, and empires. Here's the claim. When a superpower deploys its most expensive technology into contested territory, the real weapon isn't the blast. The real weapon is what happens after the blast, what gets recovered, what gets studied, and what gets turned into a permanent advantage against the original owner. And today, we're looking at the most uncomfortable version of that idea, the scenario where American top-tier weapons are used against Iranian infrastructure and Tehran, whether through physical recovery, fragments, signatures, or lessons, turns the event into something the US can't bomb away. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to give you a simple 4-step pattern. Once you learn it, you'll be able to predict what comes next with scary accuracy. But first, I want to make you a promise. This won't be vague geopolitics talk. We're going to be specific, step by step, and ruthless about cause and effect. Now, why is this accelerating right now? Because the world is under financial pressure. When the global system is loaded with debt, everything becomes more brittle. Every operation, every weapon, every crisis is forced through a narrower pipe of budgets, supply chains, politics, and risk tolerance. The IMF has estimated global debt around the hundreds of trillions, and other major trackers have measured it even higher. Those numbers aren't just economics. They're the pressure level in the pipes. Under high pressure, systems don't fail politely, they shed parts. Now take the headline idea. An American billion-dollar bomb fell into Iran. How Tehran turned it against the US. Let's be careful and analytical here. Not every story online is accurate, and not every dramatic claim means a single intact weapon was picked up like a prize. But here's what is always true in modern strikes. Even successful missions can leave behind usable clues. Fragments, components, casing behavior, fusing patterns, guidance signatures, and operational fingerprints. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's data, sometimes it's the quiet lesson of what worked and what didn't. And once an adversary gets enough of those clues, the exchange rate flips. One expensive American action and becomes multiple cheaper enemy improvements. Now here's the systemic revelation most people miss. The battlefield doesn't just destroy things, it distributes information. And that distribution follows a repeating mechanism, 4 stages, always in order. First, a dominant power builds an edge through money, secrecy, and scale. It feels permanent. Second, the power starts deploying that edge widely. The edge becomes routine. The doctrine becomes dependent on it. Third, friction hits. Something falls. Something fails. Something gets recovered. Something gets observed. Fourth, the rival converts what it got into 3 products: technical adaptation, narrative leverage, and cost imposition. That's the machine. And once the machine starts, it doesn't stop, because copying and adapting is cheaper than inventing. Now, I'm going to prove this is real with 3 historical cases, different technologies, different decades, same pattern. Case 1, the Sidewinder lesson. In the 1950s, the US develops the AM-9 Sidewinder, an early heat-seeking air-to-air missile. It's not just a weapon, it's an advantage. It represents US electronics leadership and Cold War industrial power. That's stage 1, build the edge. Then stage 2, deploy it. Missiles get used in real-world tensions and proxy environments because that's what dominance does. It spreads. Then, stage 3, friction. A Sidewinder hits a target and fails to detonate properly. An intact enough missile ends up recovered. Suddenly, this isn't just a missile anymore, it's a physical tutorial. Then stage 4, conversion. The rival studies it, accelerates development, closes the gap. The US hasn't lost, but it has donated a shortcut. The treadmill speeds up. The cost rises. One recoverable artifact becomes years of enemy progress. Now, case 2, the U-2 incident. Late 1950s. The US fields the U-2 for high-altitude reconnaissance. The assumption is simple. We're above your reach. That's the edge. Then the edge becomes routine. Flights happen. The system normalizes risk, then friction. In 1960, a U-2 is shot down over the Soviet Union. The pilot survives. The wreckage is recovered. And this is where people misunderstand the damage. The real damage isn't one aircraft lost. The real damage is that an entire secret method becomes inspectable. The adversary can analyze. The world can watch the propaganda. The diplomatic shock lands, defenses adjust. That's conversion, technical adaptation, narrative leverage, cost imposition, all from one failure event. Now case 3, Iran and the captured RQ-170. The US builds stealthy unmanned platforms with sensitive systems. That's stage 1. Those platforms are flown in contested spaces because intelligence dominance is addictive. That's stage 2. Then stage 3, the platform goes down and Iran announces it has recovered it largely intact. and the US acknowledges losing it. Whether every claim is perfectly true isn't the key point. The key point is that Iran had enough of a real artifact to create strategic consequences. Then stage 4, conversion. Iran gains technical insight, gains messaging power, and forces the US to assume compromise and spend to restore its edge. So now you've seen it 3 times. Here comes the uncomfortable part. We apply the exact same mechanism to the present. And I want you to notice how non-dramatic this actually is. It's not about a movie scene where someone carries a pristine bomb into a lab. It's about a colder reality, how modern warfare bleeds information. So, stage 1 today, the edge. America's modern advantage is precision plus integration. Weapons aren't just metal, they're networks. Targeting, intelligence, stealth platforms, planning, electronic warfare, logistics, command systems. High-end bunker-busting munitions are a perfect example of this. Specialized tools designed for hardened targets, delivered through elite aircraft and complex mission planning. And these are not normal bombs. They represent a rare tier of capability. That's the edge. Now, stage 2, deployment at scale, or at least deployment in the real world. Here's the rule. The moment you use a rare capability in an actual strike, you've done 2 things at once. You've tried to destroy the target. And you've revealed information about yourself. You've revealed what you prioritize, what you fear, what you believe is critical, what you believe is possible, what you believe is worth exposing. And every deployment adds patterns, timing patterns, routing logic, likely assumptions, and signatures that can be studied. Now stage 3, friction and loss of control. This is the stage people emotionally resist because they confuse it with losing. Loss of control does not mean the US lost the battle. Loss of control means the US cannot fully control what remains after the battle. In hardened target strikes, uncertainty is structural. Damage assessments can be disputed, access can be limited, underground effects are hard to verify quickly, and uncertainty creates space for rivals to operate, physically and psychologically. This is where recoverable artifacts matter. Even if a munition works perfectly, fragments exist, metallurgy exists, casing performance exists, fuse behavior leaves evidence, guidance techniques leave fingerprints. If anything fails, the evidence gets better for the adversary. If anything embeds in terrain, the evidence can become recoverable. This is not politics, this is physics. Now stage 4, conversion, the part Tehran can turn into a long-term weapon. There are 3 conversion products, and I want you to lock them into your mind. First, technical adaptation. Iran doesn't need to copy an American superweapon exactly. That's a childish way to think. The real goal is to shrink uncertainty and improve survival. If Iran learns what kind of penetrator geometry works best, what kind of fusing timing is used, what kind of guidance style is common, what kinds of target points are chosen, what kind of mission package is likely, then Iran can adjust. That adjustment can be deep and boring, which is why it's powerful. It can mean adding redundancy, changing tunnel geometry, hardening access points, improving dispersal, increasing decoys, creating false ventilation shafts, adding layered deception, changing the electromagnetic environment around sites, training analysts to recognize strike fingerprints. And the most important adaptation isn't metal, it's doctrine. How do we survive the next strike? That doctrine becomes the real reverse engineering. Second, narrative leverage. In this region, narrative is a weapon. If Iran can claim it resisted, survived, recovered, studied, whether showing fragments, showing crater analysis, showing proof of durability, it can turn an attack into a story of endurance. That story fuels domestic legitimacy. It signals to allies, it intimidates rivals. It complicates diplomacy. Even the perception of, we learned from your best shot, is valuable. And here's the dark truth. Narrative doesn't need perfect facts. Narrative needs convincing visuals and repeatable framing. That's why recovery, real or partial, matters so much. Third, cost imposition. This is the killer product. Cost imposition means forcing the US to spend more to achieve the same effect. If Tehran can harden and adapt faster than the US can strike, then each next strike becomes more expensive, more complex, more politically risky. And because advanced operations rely on fragile chains, rare munitions, limited platforms, tanker support, secure comms, planning cycles, forcing extra complexity is a strategic victory even if no aircraft is shot down. Cost imposition works like this. You make the other side pay more. You make them reveal more. You make them operate under tighter constraints. You make their edge become their burden. And the global financial environment matters here. In a world already strained, expensive complexity becomes harder to sustain without consequences. Now, I want to pause and give you a mini reveal, because this is the retention hinge of the entire video. The big secret isn't that Iran can steal technology. The big secret is that the US can't stop teaching once it starts using the tools Every real-world deployment teaches. And the only question is, who learns faster from each event? That's why this isn't just about Iran. It's about the modern strategic economy, asymmetric learning. In the 20th century, power was factories and fleets. In the 21st century, power is feedback loops. And Iran's entire survival model is built on feedback loops, learning from confrontation, improving, and forcing its opponent to spend. Now, let's talk about the three seams where American complexity becomes vulnerable, because this is where viewers usually lean in. Seam 1, predictability. High-end operations require planning assumptions, timing windows, routes, electronic warfare envelopes, refueling logic, target sequencing. The more complex the operation, the more assumptions it needs. Adversaries don't need to stop every mission. They need to study assumptions and make them expensive. Seam 2, secrecy erosion. America's advantage depends on keeping certain capabilities mysterious, but the modern world is flooded with sensors, satellites, commercial imagery, open source analysis, and shared investigation. Add physical remnants and strike fingerprints, and secrecy becomes a shrinking island. Seam 3, financial tolerance. Advanced systems are costly, maintenance is costly, replacement is costly, upgrades are costly, operational tempo is costly. Adversaries seek cheaper counters. Decoys, tunnels, dispersion, electronic interference, cyber pressure, political warfare. The goal is not to beat you in a straight line. The goal is to make your straight line unaffordable. Now, here's the part I want you to remember the next time you see a dramatic headline. This mechanism doesn't require Iran to be stronger than the United States. It requires Iran to be more efficient at turning American actions into Iranian improvements. That's it. And that is why the outcome is predictable. Because when you put advanced tools in contested ground, the ground becomes a classroom for your enemy. Now we have to address the comforting myth that always appears right here. People say, but America is exceptional. People say, but technology will save us. People say, but this time is different. AI, stealth, cyber, satellites, precision. This advantage can't be copied. No. This time is different is the last prayer of systems right before the structure reveals itself. Exceptionalism does not cancel friction. Technology does not end competition. It accelerates it. Complexity is not only capability. Complexity is also fragility. It creates more points of failure, more dependencies, more signatures, and more recoverable lessons. So here is the final warning, simple, sharp, and uncomfortable. When you hear about rare, high-end American strikes, do not focus only on the explosion. Focus on the system. A strike is a moment. A recovered clue is a decade. A mission is a night. A lesson extracted is a long-term multiplier. And in a world where rivals adapt cheaply and quickly, the side that turns your expensive moment into their cheap decade is the side that quietly improves while you quietly pay. So what do you do with this? Here's your practical takeaway, and this is the part you can actually use. Stop thinking in events. Start thinking in mechanisms. When you consume geopolitical news, ask these 4 questions in this exact order. What was the edge that was assumed to be exclusive? How widely is that edge being deployed, and what dependency is being created? Where's the loss of control? What remnants, signatures, or uncertainties were created? And how will the rival convert it into adaptation, narrative leverage, and cost imposition? If you can do that, you will stop being surprised by sudden shifts, because they won't be sudden anymore. They'll be the next stage of a machine you can finally see, and now you've seen it. If you want the next piece, the part most people never connect, how this same 4-stage mechanism also shows up in economics, currencies, and social stability, and what the next stage looks like when the pressure in the pipes keeps rising. Subscribe, because the next video isn't about one bomb. It's about the system that keeps producing these outcomes. And once you understand that system, you don't just watch the news, you predict it.